Okay, we're going to talk about perimeter and area. There's going to be formulas. It's best that you memorize them. If not, they're always going to be on your formula chart, so you can always look it up if you need to. Formula for perimeter is going to be side plus side plus side plus side. Formula for area is going to be length times width. So here's our three different scenarios. Obviously, this perimeter formula is for a quadrilateral, but you're also going to have different shaped things that you're going to be finding area and perimeter. They're called irregular shapes. So if we're looking at this example, which this is on you guys' homework, actually it was a couple days ago, but this was on your homework. So if you're looking at a shape like this and you're finding perimeter, perimeter is distance around. So anytime somebody says find the perimeter, like if I was finding the perimeter of this easel, it would be the distance around. Okay, it's where the wood is. If I was finding the area, it would be the white surface place. Okay, so that's why the formula for area is length times width, because you're going to multiply your length times your width to give you the surface area. And perimeter is just going to be that you're measuring the distance around. Okay, so if we're looking at this irregular shape, we're missing some numbers that we're going to have to plug in if we're going to find the perimeter, because we're finding the entire distance around. So we have the 4 inches here, we have 35 here, we have 4 here, this is missing, we have 6 here. Well, if there's a 6 inches here, we know this is also going to be 6 inches, assuming that I drew this correctly. If this is 4 inches and we're missing this, that's going to be the same. Okay, so that's going to also be 4 inches. And then if this is 35 and we're missing this, then obviously that too is going to be 35 inches. So if we're finding the perimeter of this, we're going to need to write down all of these numbers. We can do this in our head a little bit, or you can write down all the numbers. For the sake of that we taught you guys how to look for tens when we're adding, I'm going to go ahead and write everything down just to show you that if you did it that way, it wouldn't be hard, because we've been taught how to look for tens. Okay, so if we're looking at this, we've got 35 and 35 right here. We've got our 4, and our 4 right here, and we've got our 6 and our 6. So if we're looking for tens, again, we've got 10, we've got 20, we've got 30, plus 4 is 34, carry our 3, and then 3 times 3, 3, 6, 9 is 9. So the perimeter of this would be 94 inches. Now, it's perimeter, so it's not squared, it's just distance around, so you're always going to have a unit of measure. You always want to include your unit of measure in your answer, so the complete answer for this would be 94 inches. Now, if we wanted to do this kind of mentally, we've got 6 plus 6 is 12, you know that 4 times 3 is 12, and you probably could do 35 at double to 70, but if not, let's just say that you knew 35 plus 35 was 70. So we could have added it 7, 8, 9 like this as well and gotten the same answer. So you always want to just look for different ways that make math faster for things that you already know. You know your doubles, you know your multiplication facts, so that makes it a little bit easier to get to 94. Okay, so if we're looking at a rectangle, we know that, again, if we're going to find the perimeter of this, I'm going to go ahead and write P, okay? The formula is side plus side plus side plus side, which you can always write down just to make it easier, okay? So if you're going to go by a formula, then we know one of the sides is 12.5. Well, if this is 12.5, this is also going to be 12.5, so we know we're going to have that twice. If this is 4.6, then we know that this is also 4.6. And this is what it would look like in a formula, okay? So then we would put perimeter equals, and this is all addition, just kind of like a PEMDAS, and so we would add all these together. So the most important thing about adding these is they've got decimals in them. So again, we know that we have to line up our decimals. So I'm going to go ahead and do it here, and then I'll just erase it. So I'm lining up all my decimals. I'm looking for tens again, so I've got 10. Well, I know 6 plus 6 is 12, so that's going to be 22, and I'm going to carry my 2. I've got 4, 8, 10, 12, 14. Carry the 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is 34. I'm going to bring down my decimal straight down. That's why I lined it up. Okay, so my total answer for this perimeter is 34.2 meters. My unit of measure is meters. Now again, that's my perimeter, so I don't have a squared or a cubed. So all I'm going to have is my unit of measure. Okay, so I'm going to erase this so we can do the area. Okay, so that's my perimeter. Now my formula for area is length times width. So I'm going to always have you guys use the formula. I just think it's better, especially getting ready for middle school. You're going to want to be really familiar with the formulas and use them always. It just makes everything a little bit easier. So if my formula is length times width, I'm determining which one of these is my length. Well, usually it's going to be your horizontal, and usually it's going to be the one that's biggest. It doesn't really matter because you're just multiplying it. So we don't know our area, so I'm going to write down my A, and my length is 12.5, and my width is 4.6, okay, or 4 6/10. So I'm going to be multiplying these two together. So I'm going to set up my multiplication up here. Now remember, we don't purposely line up our decimals when we multiply. They're going to line up this time just because they do, but we don't force that. I've taught you guys just to pretend like you don't have decimals when you're putting your problem together, and then put your decimals back in, so that way you're lining everything up correctly, okay? All right, so we have 6 times 5 is 30, carry the 3. We have 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15, carry the 1. We have 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So I've used that. I'm going to put my 0 placeholder. I'm going to cross out what I've carried. I'm now multiplying by my 4. 4 times 5 is 20, carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10, carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So I'm going to draw my line. I'm going to put my addition sign. I'm going to add. I've got 0, I've got 5, I've got 7, and I've got 5. Now remember, we just multiplied by decimals. So this is not 5,750 because I have to come up here and see, okay, I've got one number to the right of the decimal in this. I've got one number to the right of the decimal in my second number. So that tells me I'm going to move my decimal back twice, because 1 plus 1 is 2. Where's my decimal right now? It's at the end. So it's right here. I'm going to move it 2 times to the left, and that leaves me with an area of 57. Sorry, my pen's messing up. 57 and 5/10. Now, this was area. My unit of measure is still meters, but since it's area, the answer is going to be squared, okay? Because really what you did is you just found the area for this rectangle, okay? So 57 and 5/10 meters squared is my answer for my area. Okay, so now I'm looking at this figure. Well, what am I looking at? Why do I have 4 little hash marks on this? What does that tell me about this figure? So if you think back to when we learned this, that tells me all 4 sides are congruent, which means this is a square. So that's going to make things a little bit easier formula-wise, because if we're finding the perimeter of a square, if we're finding the distance around, we don't really have to do s times s times s times s, because our sides are all what? Well, they're all the same. They're congruent. So instead of adding all that together, because you guys are really good multipliers, it's just going to be easier for you to do perimeter equals 4s, which is 4 times side. And you can use this formula for perimeter if you're finding the perimeter of a square, because all your sides are congruent. You can just multiply your side times 4. So this is going to be P equals 4 times 5.3, or 5 3/10. So I'm going to come up here and do my multiplication. So 4 times 3 is 12, carry the 1. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21. Right now my decimal's at the end, but I have one number to the right of the decimal up here. So I'm going to move it back 1 time, and my answer for my perimeter is 21 and 2/10. My unit of measure is inches. Okay, again, it's just the distance around, so it's not squared. So now let's find the area. My formula for area is length times width. Well, if I'm talking about a square, then my length and my width are going to be the same, right? So it's going to be 5 3/10 times 5 3/10. So I'm going to come up here to do my multiplication. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 5 is 15. I'm going to put my 0 placeholder. Done with my 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Carry the 1. 5 times 5 is 25. Plus 1 is 26. I'm going to do my addition. I've got a 9, 10, carry the 1, 7, 2. Okay, right now my decimal's at the end, but I've got one number to the right of the decimal here. I've got one number to the right of the decimal in this. So right now it's at the end. I'm going to move it back twice. So my area equals 27 and 9/100ths. My unit of measure is inches. And because it's area, it's squared.